we don't even know if this is going to fix the problem, but like it could.
Welcome to the Jackie Ray Show.
Welcome back to the Jackie Ray Show, your home for news, sports, and community. As promised, if you got your sample ballot in the mail, which I just got today, I was pretty late in getting my ballot, but I got it. It is thick, but as promised, we are going to start breaking down some of the things you have to vote on in November, and especially here in Long Beach. So one of the big things that people are talking about, one of the things that I saw people in city council they're very vocal about is Measure JB. Jason and I were kind of powwowing before the show, and clearly there's some things about this that I don't know. So welcome our political reporter for the Long Beach Watchdog, Jason Ruiz.
I was going to stop you and make you introduce me. I was like, I know we haven't seen each other in a while, but did you forget who I was?
I know. I wanted to put like applause here, like, Jason.
We don't need applause.
Yes, we do.
I don't do the work for the claps.
No, it's so good to see you. I know we used to do this before on our former platform, but it's good to see you here, and you're still putting in the work for the people of Long Beach. So you guys make sure you appreciate that. Go subscribe, become a paying member. We would definitely appreciate you. But before we even dive into Measure JB, this political season in Long Beach, it's pretty light, right?
Well, I mean, there's one city council race to be determined. I believe there's one LBCC Board of Trustees, at least one.
Okay.
I mean, but those are like usually in like to your point, in a more busy election season, like at the bottom of people's interest list. But there are the charter amendments, one of which that we're going to talk about today, and I think we published one last week about the new tax on the power plants in Southeast Long Beach.
Right.
But this one, I think, deserves or needs the kind of context that you can't really put into a story, because it's a really like dense topic. It has to do with how the city is hiring people and why, potentially, at least city officials say that, this proposal could speed it up, because right now they're taking on average like 7 months to fill positions.
Right.
About 1 in 5 city jobs is vacant, which I know you've done a lot of work with, covering the refuse issue.
Right.
That led to, your trash not getting picked up earlier this year, or was it last year? Last year, right?
Yeah.
Time is
relative
circle.
right now.
Yeah. But I mean, it leads to services being slowed down, and then also the employees who are working for the city of Long Beach, like some of them are getting burned out, because you gotta pick up the slack for all those empty positions that are not filled.
Yeah. So I went and I just read through the measure, which is 20 pages, by the way. That seemed excessive. It seemed like they could have condensed that down, but I did read through it. So I just want to let you know. So they want to take the civil service and human resource and basically merge them together, right?
Yeah. So like, think of like, again, the context. Long Beach has 2 like pots of jobs. One is filled through human resources, and those are called non-classified, which basically means you're at will. And then there's the classified positions, which is filled through the civil service department and process, and that's like the majority of city jobs are classified. Those are typically union jobs, and it goes through a much lengthier process than it does on the HR side. Like they've done some improvements on the HR side that city officials think that can be transferred over here through this ballot proposal to get the hiring down closer to, like they said, 90 business days, which I think is like 4.5 months. So they're trying to go from 7 months to 4.5 months, which is still not great, but if you're waiting to get hired, 2.5 months is pretty critical.
Right.
So.
And that was one of the issues, like you said, they were dealing with in the refuse department. They were taking like over a year to get people hired. And so by the time they were calling people back, people were like, I have another job.
I have had 2 other jobs and left those 2, and now I'm on my 3rd.
Yeah, it's insane.
But I mean, one of the things that they did, innovative thinking is like, hey, like, what if we had a job fair? And they did this for the refuse department hirings. What if we had like the fingerprint people there and the city clerk there, so you can take your oath if you accepted the job position, and like the background check, like just have it all in one place instead of like spreading that out over another few weeks. That's going to extend from when somebody accepts a job offer to when they actually start working. So
But this
They're
isn't.
trying.
Yeah, but this isn't an innovative idea.
No.
And I think because what was it before? Measure GG basically was the same concept, but people voted against it, right? 53% of voters voted against it in 2010. So in 14 years, they haven't figured out.
Well, there's a lot of finger pointing. This has been like one of those weird things that like nobody's really paying attention to, but there's been a lot of like weird and sometimes funny things that have cropped up out of this whole process. But yeah, so I mean, as before I cut you off, you were saying that like, this proposal, we talked about those two pots and those two processes for hiring. Basically, it's hard to say basically with this proposal, but
Right.
you're going to take a lot of the hiring processes from the civil service department and transfer it over to HR. Now, the thing that it has made this a contentious issue is that right now the civil service department and that process is completely independent from the rest of the city. Like they're not under the control of the city manager's department, but HR is. So there are people who are opposing this measure that have alleged that like taking those hiring functions and some of like the job creations or the letting HR decide potentially like which jobs are classified
Right.
union or not is going to lead to corruption in the hiring process. Because right now, like the civil service uses a merit-based hiring process. Usually you get a job posting, right? You apply for it. Then if your application is deemed worthy enough, a lot of the times you got to take a test, and then your test score will determine in what order you have to be interviewed for that position. So if you score high on the test, you get to interview first for most of the jobs that are available in that classification. Whereas I wouldn't say never, but usually there's not a test involved in the HR side, and therefore there is no like order in which you need to be interviewed. So the allegation is that like so-and-so's cousin is down here in the civil service process. They might have last bite at the apple, but under this new proposal, allegedly they could get closer to the top.
I find that hard to believe just because my 3 years living in Long Beach, there's been a lot of lawsuits, and and so and reading through those, nepotism is alive and well. I've always tell people this, like nepotism is one of those things, or patriarchy, whatever you want to call it. I'm not necessarily against. If my dad worked 30 years at a job, he should be able to say, hey, my daughter's coming in, look out for her. I'm not entirely opposed to that per se, but I also have to be qualified.
Yeah. If you're qualified and your dad or your uncle or so, or mom or cousin can put in a good word for you, cool.
Yeah.
I think most people would be okay with that. But like, I think the problem you run into is like when unqualified people are getting hired over qualified people.
Right.
And then it's not only like you taking away the merit and the fairness of the process, but like you're ending up with a worse product and potentially a worse run city because you have less qualified people in positions that maybe they shouldn't be in,
right.
If not for the person that they knew.
Right.
Again, these are the allegations. And truthfully, like I think both sides, proponents and opponents of this proposal have said, like, we don't even know if this is going to fix the problem, but like it could.
And I think that's the problem, because I think a lot of people for those of you who have not seen last week's podcast with Anthony Holmes, or if you've not read that story on the Long Beach Watchdog, check the link below and check that out. But I think I was working with Anthony for over a year, and the things that he was dealing with and going through his emails, which he let me see, it seems like civil service is also short-staffed, because you would email somebody and it would take forever to get a response.
So civil service has said that their staff has grown, but they think that it needs to grow more. I mean, if you're going through one job classification could have hundreds of people apply to it, and you have, I forget how many people they have there. It's like in the 20s, if I remember correctly.
So it's a low number.
Yeah. So you're processing, and that's just for one job classification. And there's, a lot of job classifications in the city. Some of them have a less rigorous process through the civil, like a school crossing guard. I don't think you're taking a test for that. But like, if you're, I mean, not to diminish the work but a school crossing guard's doing less, I don't want to say critical thinking, but like, you know what I mean? Like then like a
work.
a computer technological analyst
Right.
position. Like they want to make sure that you can like code or whatever. Like it's obviously going to probably be less rigorous, but
Mhm.
um yeah, so civil service has said, we don't have enough people. If we had more people, this process could go quicker. And then, the city is like, well, we gave you money and you didn't use it like fast enough to, bring on more people or to do the internal study to see how you could like make your department more efficient. And then the civil service is like, yeah, but we gave you guys, the hiring managers, these lists of qualified applicants, and they take forever to go through the list. They take forever to interview people and then eventually hire them. And like you said, sometimes when they hire people, those people have already accepted jobs. So it's like a big waste of everybody's time. A lot of finger pointing, a lot of back and forth, a lot of craziness. But I think it, like I said, at the end of the day, like I don't think that there's no guarantee that this is going to fix it. It could, and it could not. But
And I think that would be my reservation about voting yes on this, is because you guys haven't done your due diligence on how you can make the current system okay, and you're thinking, well, this might work. That's like people who get married and they're having marital problems saying we should have a baby. No, you shouldn't.
Is Measure JB the baby?
It's the baby.
Well, I'm not here to tell you if you should or should not have a baby. And honestly, I mean, it's not my job to tell you how to vote on this. We're just trying to give you a little bit more context to what's been. I mean, some of the I was going back through my reporting. I pulled my notes up. I mean, this has all been going from like the beginning of the year. But I remember, I remembered when I went through my old articles. I was like, I mean, it's been such a weird process. So I remember I wrote a column back in February because the mayor put out a tweet. I mean, so to be, to clarify this a little bit, like there are some city unions that are in favor of this. I believe the POA, the police officers union, is backing this measure. Not sure if fire is. They usually do back, city measures. But the city's largest employee union, IAM, is not backing it, but it's also not backing it.
What's IAM stand for?
International Association of I'm so sorry. It's a lot of words.
IAM. I'll put it in the description.
IAM. They and the engineers union are not backing it, but they're also not publicly supporting it. They both, if I remember correctly, signed like agreements with the city, basically saying like, I don't know what's going to happen if this passes, but if it does, like this is going to, like, we're taking care of our people. So they're not like for or against it publicly. There are the civil service commissioners have been very vocal about being against this, as are the civil service employees who, if this does pass, they're not going to lose their jobs. They've been offered, I don't want to say promise, but they've been told that they can basically go, laterally into the HR position, since HR would be taking over the hiring functions that are.
Is that the main reason why they're against it? Is because they feel like they're going to lose their jobs, or are there other reasons?
Well, I think that, just from like, people taking pride in their work, they're just like, hey, like you guys are all trying to make this sound like this is our fault, and it's not our fault. Like we're grinding, we're putting in the work, and we're presenting these departments with people who we objectively think are eligible for this position. And it sounds like, I mean, there's been breakdowns in communication, just the timing of how long it takes to hire somebody, leading to qualified candidates, going elsewhere for work, maybe in the private sector. It's just a whole lot of things. It's hard to like put a finger on like what's the one thing that's like really holding this up. But I mean, from my observation, lack of communication, because I've sat through several meetings where it sounds like the hiring departments are not, there's not a healthy amount of back and forth with the civil service department about like, what can we be doing better? How can we better support each other? Can we do this faster type thing? It just like, it seems like, weeks turn into months, and then these lists just expire, and then you got to start the whole process over again, because these eligibility lists don't last forever. Some last for a year, some last for 6 months. And then once that list expires, you got to start the whole process over again. People got to reapply. They got to take a test again. And then, they set up the tiers of like how they're supposed to be. Yep. It's very complicated. I'm not saying that this shouldn't be simplified. I'm just saying that I don't think that I've heard anybody say that JB like for sure is going to be the what do they call it, the silver bullet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. When I was reading those 20 pages, one of the things that I read is it said, "Hey, there's some, it's kind of ambiguous on the hiring process between, civil service and then like the HR positions. There's some," and I'm like, "Can't you just make that clear? If that's the problem, can't you just make that clear?" But to your point, there should be some differences. Like if I don't have to test for this, then obviously the hiring's not going to be the same. But can't you say this is the baseline? This is, we can clear some things up before we have to start asking the people of Long Beach to vote on measures.
And that has been an argument made by the civil service employees and the commission is like, hey, like we're kind of jumping to a conclusion here and saying that like the process is so broken that we need to ask for a charter amendment, whereas we think that there is work within ourselves as a city and as a department. I mean, I don't think the civil service commission and department are saying that like they're without fault. Like I think everybody's they're recognizing that like there are things on both ends that could be improved, and like maybe we should do those things first before we go ahead and just change the whole charter to potentially fix the hiring process, because like to undo that you're gonna have to go back to the ballot again, and the thing that it's always it's always so much easier for the city council to put a charter amendment or a ballot measure on the ballot because it only takes 5 out of 9 people to do it. But if the community wants to do it, you got to go out and collect signatures. And that costs a lot of money.
Much harder, yeah.
So unless if this thing doesn't work out, you're gonna have to wait until a future city council decides to put another charter amendment to maybe reverse it or fix whatever's wrong with what may or may not come out of JB if it's approved, which only needs a majority, so just over 50% to pass or to be blocked again.
Then they would have to admit fault, and in my experience, politicians don't admit fault too quickly.
Well, I mean, and I think that a big part of why I felt it was important to do a video about this is that it's such I mean, you said it was 20 pages and on your ballot it's like
one paragraph.
Well, your limit, there's a limit to how many words that they can put in the ballot and a description, and I haven't looked at it yet, what's actually on the ballot, but part of this proposal is like we're going to create new hiring preferences. So right now there's preferences, you get extra points, you take your tests, right? And if you're a veteran or a wounded veteran, you get additional points that like gives you a little bit of a leg up. Well, they're going to add some new hiring preferences for if you live in Long Beach, you'll get extra points. If you went to a school in the area like Cal State Long Beach, Dominguez Hills, Long Beach City College, you get extra points. If you're an intern or a part-time employee at the city, you get extra points. So like I'm sure that's in the language because that's a big selling point of this, but like how do you squeeze that everything that we've talked about in the past 15 minutes into a paragraph of like, well, pros and cons, or maybe pros and cons, or like we don't really know. So voters are going to get like a very, very small bite of what's actually in this proposal. I mean, not even my opinion, it's 20 pages long. And they're going to have to make a decision on whatever those, that paragraph says. Yeah. So it's kind of, you have an advantage. It's on the ballot, right? And now you have the little snippet that voters get to see. And I think that depending on how it's written, voters, from my observations, is like when something's too confusing, like with legalized gambling, right? A few years ago, everybody's like, like I'm okay with it, but honestly, like this is just too confusing, and there's a lot of negativity about it. So they ended up voting no on both of them. And I think that's what people's nature is to do. Is like if you don't fully understand something, you just vote no on it because you're like, well, I know what it's like right now.
Right. The devil you know.
Yeah, the devil you know is right now versus like who knows what Pandora's box opens if we vote yes, because it's such a dense topic to unpack.
Yeah, I'm not entirely surprised that the police union endorsed it, because that's been the biggest complaint that I've heard about this measure. That if this passes, then now like I've been covering, some internal stripes with the refuse department
Mm.
and things of that nature, but now the problem is going to be that they can investigate themselves,
Well,
right? Is
Re
that
well, so yeah, that is
if this
again one of the
passes?
allegations. So right now, like if you have a employee complaint, it goes through the
Mhm.
commission process, and there's an investigation that's carried out on the civil service side. And the way that this could change things is that, according to some of the opponents, what they believe is that the invest not the investigation, because there will still be a commission that will be in charge of those investigations, or the complaints, I should say. But the allegation is that you're going to have to be depending on the information coming from HR, which is under the control of city management. So you may not be getting the information that you actually need to determine if somebody was like wrongfully terminated, or
Mhm.
or harassed in the workplace,
Right.
or not given a fair shake in the hiring process. And then the city council would have to authorize the city manager to go in and do like a full
Oh.
investigation.
Oh.
Um, but and city management has pledged that they would hire an outside law firm to do those investigations to make them more neutral. But I don't know. Like I said, it's and when people are confused, and I've been covering this for 6 months. No,
Mhm.
wait, what month is it? Almost November. It is
My
almost
birthday's
November. That's
coming
why
up.
we're doing this.
Yep.
So 10 months I've been following this issue, and it's like I mostly understand it.
Right.
But you voters are going to get, however long you take on each ballot measure to understand what's going on. But yeah, I forgot the funny things that have happened.
Okay.
All right, because this is funny. I totally forgot about this. In February, like I had mentioned, IAM is not publicly
Endorsing.
endorsing one
Mhm.
way or the other. But in February, the to my knowledge, anyways, I don't know if they've come out and endorsed it since. Um, the mayor put out a tweet in February, and I wrote a column about this because it was a video that showed the president of IAM, you know, in so many words endorsing this ballot measure, and I was like, wait, I was like, she's not the president anymore. It was so I made some texts, I made some phone calls, and I found out that it was an old video. It was not authorized by IAM, like current IAM leadership, to be put out in a tweet because they were at the time actually saying that they were not supporting it. So
Wow.
put out a tweet like making it look like the city's largest employee union was actually for this measure. That was funny. So I wrote a column about that. Then we had the executive director of the commission
Okay.
recently just had, like, the city council usually doesn't do contract negotiations in open session, but for
Mhm.
some reason a pay increase for her was on the agenda, and they just talked about it in the open, and they denied her a pay increase. That was interesting. And then in one of the in one of the more colorful ways I've ever heard a commissioner describe something, one of the civil service commissioners has compared this proposal to a nice steak dinner with a baked potato, and I forgot what, if it was asparagus. Was it asparagus?
Probably
It might,
asparagus.
but also like to the side, and her insinuation was that like the hiring preferences and speeding up the job hiring process is the nice steak dinner with the mashed potatoes, baked potato, whatever it was. But on the side of the plate was a little piece of poo.
What?
It was my
God.
favorite thing to put in a quote. I was like, this is electric. The people
That
are
is great.
excited, and the poo was the potential for this to lead to corruption.
Right.
Yeah,
And I think that's my biggest fear. I think after reading all 20 pages, which even in reading through those 20 pages, I do feel like there's language that would have been more appropriate that would reach the masses and they would fully understand what this measure is about. But in reading that, I didn't see any definitive thing that stood out to me and said, "Oh, yes, this is how it's going to fix the problem." That just it's not in there. And so for me it's like, okay, well, obviously more due diligence needs to be done if you're looking for an actual fix because this doesn't scream, "Wait till you see the results of this."
yeah. I don't. Again, it's not. I'm not trying to tell people
Yeah.
yes or no box is the correct one to mark. Is it a bubble? You don't
It's a
check it. It's a
bubble.
bubble. You got to bubble it,
It's
right?
like the Scantron.
Um, And I just think that there's just a lot of unanswered questions. And it's like
Yeah.
one of those things where it's like, well, just vote for it and we'll see what happens. Trust us. And what's crazy is like Long Beach and San Diego are the only cities that still have this process. Every other city like has
the process we're trying to go to.
Similar to that, like where hiring is under one roof, but those cities are still having hiring issues. Like you were talking about when you were talking about the police union, supporting this. Like they've said for years that their problem for hiring people is that people don't want to be cops anymore. It's never been brought up that it takes too long to hire them.
Right.
They also have their own hiring process, just like the fire department does, because you don't just like send in a resume and then they go and put you as a beat cop the next day. Like you have to go to the academy and like, do a bunch of push-ups and learn how to
drag somebody out of
safety. You have to learn how to be a public servant.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. But yeah, I don't know. And then, like I said, I hope that what you take away from this is not that I'm trying to push you one way or the other. I'm just trying to, there's a lot more than I would ever want you to read in the story, and hopefully dedicate whatever this ends up being, those amount of minutes to trying to understand this issue.
Yeah. And that's the great point about it is understanding is what's going to help you make a better decision as far as how you vote. Like I always tell Jason is going to give you the who, what, when, where, and why. He's going to give you the facts of it. I'm going to tell you my opinion on it. I don't have an opinion on this. I think it would be great if the people who live in Long Beach and love Long Beach and can work for the city that they love, I think that would be great. I think that's what the people of Long Beach is what make Long Beach great. So I think it would be great if they had an opportunity to quickly get hired in the city that they love. So I like that aspect of it. I'm a little leery on the investigation part of it. But then again, none of this is just clear cut on exactly like, yes, this is the goose that's going to lay the golden egg and fix the problem.
We've used a lot of metaphors, right? I don't know how many camels' backs are going to be broken, but I will say that my preference is I'll take a stance. I'm for, and this might surprise people, but I'm for whatever speeds up city hiring, because when you have 20% of jobs vacant, potentially, like that's affecting somebody at some point in the city. Either they're not getting their trash picked up on time, kids can't cross the school, the crosswalk safely. And I think that a fully functioning city is going to be a better city for everybody. And I live here, you live here, and I don't want to, I don't think anybody wants to live in a city that's, fighting with one hand tied behind its back because it can't fill the positions that it has, but just can't get people into them.
In-person voting starts on October 26th, but if you've received your ballot, I just received mine today, so yay. But if you have received your ballot, you can go ahead and you can fill that out, and you can drop that off into a number of different drop boxes. You can also mail it in. You have plenty of time, because I always say if you're going to mail it as early as possible. So now if you've received that, go ahead and get your little number 2 pencil out, fill that all in. And
I do it with pen.
I do it with pen too, yeah. But I'm always inclined to do it with the pencil because it reminds me of
Scantron.
Am I telling everybody how old I am? Because yes. I remember Scantron.
We're both old.
We're both old,
I remember
right?
Scantron.
So I remember you had to sharpen that number 2 pencil, get it in the little bubble. So it's nostalgia for me. But get that in as early as possible. But and if you really want to start voting in person, again, those start on October 26th. Here in Long Beach, voting in person is not that bad. I will say that, depending on the polling place that you go to, just look it up, check the times, get out there and vote. It is not that bad at all. So if you want to do that, you're more than welcome to do so. But the important thing is that you vote.
That's right.
That's the important thing.
Unless, because if you don't, we're just wasting paper.
That part too.
Yeah.
That part
they
too.
Sent you the paper, might as well
You might as well do it. Make sure you do that, and make sure you do it enthusiastically, and help keep Long Beach a great city to live in. Once again, I'm Jackie Ray. This is Jason Ruiz. Make sure you follow him and all the great work he's doing to keep you informed on what's going on in the city at lbwatchdog.com. Until next time, remember, life is short, so make it good. We'll see you next time.
Say something meaningful. Say something I don't know.